Welcome to part 2 of this music composition tutorial looking at how to recreate the main riff from Oliver Heldens' Gecko track from a couple of years ago. So in this part of the tutorial we're going to look at the sound design aspect. So for this I am using Native Instruments Massive. What Massive is really great at, it is the most popular soft synth that's ever been, and that's because it's really flexible. You can get everything from authentic analog subtractive synthesis type sounds to otherworldly evolving textures and everything in between. So what we're looking for here is quite a harsh modern EDM type sound, and this is achieved using a combination of some of the more interesting wavetable choices in the oscillator section and also the modulation oscillator. So we're going to break this down piece by piece now. Okay, so here's the riff that we identified in the last video. And I've just dropped a tuner device native to Ableton Live downstream from the Massive just so we can see the notes that have been played there. So what I've got playing at the moment is simply the first oscillator, no filtering, nothing like that. And we're slowly going to build up the complexity towards the full sound. So on the first oscillator here, we've got this option from Analog Electric. We've got this Grown 3 wavetable. So with each wavetable WT position, you've got a couple of different waveforms that you can potentially morph between using the WT position rotary control. So you can see I've got this set to about 3 o'clock. Next up, the intensity control. Now when we're in the default mode of spectrum here, this has the same sort of effect as a low pass filter, although not absolutely identically working the same. It is filtering off just a little bit of the higher harmonic content from the wavetable, and you can see I've pitched it down by an octave, 12 semitones. Now if I just activate the modulation oscillator here now and just deactivate oscillator 1, you see the modulation oscillator in Massive doesn't actually generate any tone, any sound itself. It is a sine wave source that we can use to modulate any of the other 3 oscillators or indeed filters in a range of different ways. So you can see here oscillator 1, I'm using this phase modulation control, which is similar to frequency modulation, and it gives you sort of quite a digital, harsh sound. So let's just have a listen to that. You can see if I select phase, I start to dial this round. We get that harsh digital flavour. So I've just dialed that in a little bit. You can see I've pitched the modulation oscillator up by an octave. So the original oscillator 1 is acting as the carrier, if we're relating this back to frequency modulation or phase modulation, and the modulation oscillator is obviously the modulator. So that's the first oscillator. The second oscillator, let's just deactivate these and activate the second. It's this same wavetable, Grown 3, same wavetable position. You can see the effect of the intensity control on the sound. And this has been pitched up by 7 semitones, and that equates to a perfect fifth. So if we just add those two together, we get that nice strong fifth relationship there. Okay, so what have we done to this one using the modulation oscillator? Well, in this case, you can see I've clicked on oscillator 2 and we turned up the ring modulation control just a fraction. And what's interesting there is you can see that I'm just starting and stopping. So the first note in the programmed MIDI clip is a G, but because I've pitched the oscillator up by 7 semitones, that's a fifth, it's given me a D. If you remember from the last video, D is exactly a fifth away from G. And if I start to apply a bit of ring modulation to the sound, if I go all the way around, you can see it goes back to a G. So we're actually blending in some of the G back into this D. So you can hear how important in this case the modulation oscillator is for getting the sound that we're looking for. Okay, let's just deactivate that. And let's have a listen to the third oscillator. Now this is really nice sounding wavetable. It's from over here. It's the colours wavetable. Now what this is giving me, if I just switch back over to the piano for a second, when I hit a G on the massive with the colours wavetable, it's actually given me a G major 7th chord. If we listen to that versus that, it's the same sort of sound. So one note gets turned into a chord. And it's just adding that nice little bit of texture there. Okay, so that's everything for the oscillator section. Let's look at the insert. Now what we've got here is the sine shaper, and it's essentially just distorting the sound a little bit. If I just dial that back, dial it up, just dirtying up the sound a little bit, just adding a little bit of distortion there. Okay, let's take a look at the envelopes that we'll be using. So first of all, the amplitude envelope. You can see the amplitude envelope default envelope generator is number 4. Fast attack. We've got no sustain level, so each note has a finite period to it. So it doesn't matter how long, within reason, it doesn't matter how long these notes are. If I do this, for example, you can see it doesn't matter whether the note programmed is that long or that long, it's got a sort of finite period to it, and that's because there is no sustain level. So you can see fast attack, relatively short decay time. So that's the volume envelope.